going into Imperfect Women, watched it on Apple TV, okay? And I want to get into, there's going to be aspects of perpetrators in our homes or in our like friend circle. There's tones of like psychological thriller stuff. So if that's something you're like, nope, just stop watching now. Dynamics of friendship, aspects of relationship. These are the things, the talking points. All right. And as I go into it, I'll do the first part, no spoilers, and then I'll get into it. Some people enjoy doing makeup. I enjoy the feeling of paint and different brushes on my skin. And a fave thing for me is binging cinema, TV, books, etc. So here I am, art for art's sake. Dive into musings around life, relationship, intimacy, aliveness, and enjoying the roller coaster that is this life. So come muse and play. Once again, you're here and I'm here, and we are going into Imperfect Women, and what showed up? Well, I paint. So let's see. First, let's pick some colors maybe, huh? This was a darker show in the sense of it having some psychological thriller tones. It wasn't like a super psychological thriller where, you know, certain things are so intense as psychological thrillers. It wasn't like that. It was more detective-y, solve the mystery, that kind of a thing. So, oh, I'm gonna have to get creative. I forgot my paper towel. So let's see. First, let's try to not give any sort of spoilers, and I'll just talk a little bit about the show. I also didn't bring my mirror, so let's see. Let's work on places I can see. All right, which brush should I use? Let's start with this smaller one, but I think I want to play with some really tiny ones this time. See if I can draw some lines. Let's see what happens. Okay, so there are like, what I liked about this is all of the dynamics of friendship. There's even like in one of the trailers, there's like a concept of where the detective says something like, I don't know what you guys have, but it's not a friendship. And that was something that made me like really curious. Okay, what is this whole story about? So there's dynamics of friendship and relating in the world, all of that kind of stuff. It's really interesting in that way. It keeps you guessing, and that I always think is like a fun thing when we think about these types of shows, because if I feel like I know the story, it takes away some of that magic to it. You know, it's nice when it's not super predictable. And so I really liked that. I liked that just cover that right up. I liked that I didn't know, you know, it like sets it up where it's like, ooh, this person, could it be this person? Like you're kind of always on the edge, which brings up those components of trust. And I think that that's a big thing in our society. Like it just shows how prevalent like the lack of trust is, as well as just like being on guard like that, and the type of person somebody may be for if they're more trustworthy or trusting of others or less. So both sides of that coin. Let's see. Definitely had like some of the real life dynamics of real life drama, you know, again, little bits of that with like relationship and even like friendship and stuff. So that was kind of like interesting to see portrayed, you know, real life drama kind of aspects. That was kind of fun. It would be interesting to know like certain characters and who like resonates with certain characters, in the sense of, you know, there's people with money, people with less money. How does that work? Same with like the main character, Nancy. She doesn't come from money and then like is in it. So some of those concepts are kind of interesting to play with while you're in it. So yeah, now I want to get into some stuff. I don't think a lot of it would be like too much of a spoiler, but at the same time, I don't want somebody who wants to watch this to be spoiled. I want to get into like relationship dynamics and stuff like that, in which case I'm going to talk about the characters and kind of who they are in that regard when we're thinking about relationship dynamics. I'm also going to get into more of like the perpetrator components, and that I think could give away a few things. So I'm going to just kind of finish what I'm doing here so you can take time to pause. I'm also going to pick a different color. Boop, boop, boop. I love it. The little boops feel different than like the lines. This is fun with this like skinnier brush it is. It's kind of like when you use this brush on its side. It's just a little bit of a different sensation. Okay, let's pick a color here and then I will go ahead and start talking. Ooh, let's do purple and purple and yellow, complementary. Yeah, fun. I am going to, though, pick a different brush, I think, because I don't, when you mix complementary colors, it makes them yucky versus having them side by side and such. Okay, so let's get into it. There are aspects of open relationships. So right off the bat, you hear about like Eleanor being more in like an open relationship dynamic, possibly just having like multiple lovers, that kind of thing. This brush has a little weird thing on it. Oh, and I mixed this up. Here, I'll show you that too. So this one's just got a little bit round versus the square, but there's something that needs to be cut off. So we'll see if it draws its own little lines here. So the concept of open relationships and what that's like, and the type of person, there's definitely the aspects of, is she avoiding something? And sometimes that's something that shows up. Open relationships are very interesting. I could go on and on. I'm pretty sure I did a podcast on Enlivening Musings about, open relationships versus monogamy and how that is like an individualistic choice, but then ties into you need to want to be with somebody who is a match for that. And so there's like dynamics of that, like, who she's with and how much commitment she can give them, etc. And then we have Mary, who is married to Howard, and they have kids, and seems like it's more of like in that monogamous type of sphere. And then we have Nancy and Robert, and they're married, and they have one kid who's older, grown. And it begins with like the concept of cheating. So there are concepts of cheating throughout this show. So again, like knowing anything that could like be triggering or anything. Sometimes people are very triggered watching shows that like depict things like that. So that is very prevalent. And like, what does that bring up, right? It brings up like things in our society, like why are people cheating? How much communication is there in relationship? Like, what is going on here? Is a person trying to like fulfill some unmet need? Are they like just so unhappy with themselves? Like, there's just all those concepts come up where it's like, look at this person who's cheating and why, and what the hidden things are to that. And then, how does that get you in trouble, right? Like, it's intense. And then we have, again, like the open relationship bit was very light, so not so much there. It's more just like that cheating aspect that brings that up, which also, there's the dynamics in relationship with like the lack of trust and the lack of communication. You see that a lot in like Nancy and Roberts, like it keeps people in the dark. And like I said, there's this big thing with keeping you on your toes of like, who could the like murderer be, right? And so it's interesting how the lack of trust shows up among the friends, and then even among the partners, like the married partners. My nose is so itchy. It's like, whoa. So to think about, I mean, this is something when we think about just the fact, I mean, recent times right now, it's May of 2026. We've had like a recent thing where there's been like a site that got a million bajillion hits. I'm not giving facts here, but that it showed that a perpetrator can be in your own home, and that is really scary. And so like thinking about that, thinking about it being in your friend circle, thinking about it being like that. And so this show brings that up. It brings up that unknowing, that who do I trust? I can't trust anybody. But what's prevalent is that there isn't a lot of communication between the people. Like, people are being secretive. They're not being vulnerable. They're not being raw. They're not being open with one another. And so it shows like how that feeds that dynamic, right? It's like if we aren't being vulnerable and we aren't being open, it's just interesting to see how, you know, that feeds into that, and you're going to be like attracting people who aren't forthcoming and this and that too, you know. And if you're not able to be forthcoming, and what's all hidden behind the scenes, and what kind of dynamics and relationships are there. And so it's just really interesting. And none of that, I mean, as I'm saying, it kind of sounds like it could be victim blaming, and I don't mean it like that at all, because like I also think people can just be hiding things and you just don't see it and you don't know, and stuff like that happens. And that's what I think is coming to head in our society, is like all this hidden like perversion and stuff, because our sexual selves aren't celebrated and or understood or accepted, because there's been so much telling us how bad and wrong we are. So, I mean, that's a whole nother tangent. Fun stuff. Okay, let's see what else. Disclosure, vulnerability, the relationships. Oh, tied into that concept of perpetrators and just dysfunction, it's wild in this show to see the lengths somebody would go to. I mean, some stuff got really whoa, because, and again, so I am kind of trying to not give a ton of spoilers, but there's a scene in the hospital and you're like, what? Like, effing puke, okay? How disgusting that somebody would do something like this to somebody they could, would, should really care about. I mean, it's intense. So there is like, I'd say that's probably, well, there's a few things, but I'll say that there's just like a few things where you're like, ooh, oh, wow, okay, that's intense, as far as like visual depiction type things. And that one, it's not even like you see something really awful or gross. It's more just like that concept, that idea of like, what? Like somebody could really go to that length just to serve their own purpose somehow. Like it's wild. There's also then tied into that the concepts of child services and things like that too. So I mean, there's a lot. And we think about like old abuse patterns and things. And again, like the whole show keeps you guessing as to like what's what, I'd say, until like the last episode or so. And you've got your suspicions the whole time. But I'd say that, you know, there's a couple episodes towards the end where you feel pretty certain. I've got some interesting like pain stuff. I just want to kind of like see what this does. Okay, so tied into that, then I'm just going to say that's like there's 8 episodes. So far it hasn't been renewed, so we'll see. The 8 episodes do like touch upon and give you a completion. They completed the book that it was like based on, but there's room for more, and like the cast has said stuff like that. Like it would be interesting and cool to. This kind of feels really neat, actually. That one had paint on the metal part. So we'll see. We'll see if something happens. Otherwise, it is complete, and you can feel as complete as you feel watching it, if you go into all of it. So that's my experience of Imperfect Women. And I don't love the title. I don't love the title. Because it puts so much of it in that. It puts it into like the blame of that. But it's understandable in the sense of like seeing like, yes, because of all these imperfections, and look at how the friend dynamics work together and how it all plays out. So understandable, but yeah, you know, it's just not my thing. But I like the show, and it kept my interest. So enjoy.